Hey, good afternoon on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. I'm Brian Manning. I'm a political asylum lawyer. My law firm is based in Texas, but we help people all over the country to secure their future in the United States through asylum. I'm going to take your questions. You're watching the Asylum Answers show. So ask the questions and I'm going to give you the answers. Go ahead and start leaving them in the comments. Say hello. I love hearing where folks are watching from. If you want to tell me what country you're from as well, I love seeing that too. So go ahead, start leaving your questions. Anything you want to know about asylum in the United States, I'm going to be very happy to address it. Okay. I'm going to say a couple words first about an important topic. So I keep getting questions about this. You probably know that when you've been waiting for a long time for your asylum interview with USCIS, you can take action. Okay. You can force your interview. You do this by suing the government in a lawsuit. We usually refer to this as a mandamus lawsuit, okay? It's where you sue the government and you're asking a federal judge to tell the asylum office that they have to give you your interview because you've been waiting too long and this is not a reasonable delay. So, hey, give the person their asylum interview, okay? That's the lawsuit, called a mandamus lawsuit. And it's super effective. We've been doing it a whole bunch lately and it works really, really well, okay? Right now, my sense, what I'm going by is 3 years. If you've been waiting 3 years or more since you applied and you haven't gotten a decision yet, then you're in a pretty strong position to sue the government and to get them to give you your interview. Or if you've already had your interview and you're waiting on a decision, then to get your decision. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I want to address briefly with you today before we get to your questions. Thanks for leaving that comment. Okay, when I bring this up with potential clients or with our current clients, we say, hey, if you want to get this thing done, we should sue the government. One thing they always ask is, but wait, will that hurt my asylum case? Like, will it make me look bad? Will it make me look too aggressive? And like, how dare you challenge the government, the US government, by suing us? So will that basically prejudice then their asylum case when it comes time to have their asylum interview and get the asylum decision? It's a completely reasonable question. I understand it. I get it. It makes sense to think that, yeah, they might, take retribution or hold this against you in your asylum case. But the truth of the matter is that no, that won't happen. I say that with a lot of confidence. In fact, I don't worry at all for my clients about the government taking revenge or this somehow negatively affecting their asylum case. Okay. And hey, good to see you. I'm going to take your questions, but I want to tell you the two reasons quickly why I don't think that this is going to hurt your asylum case. The fact that you've sued the government to get your interview, or if you're waiting for your decision, then getting the decision. So there's two reasons. First of all, I don't think that the asylum officer who is going to ultimately interview you and make a decision in your case is going to know that you've sued the government, okay? I used to be an asylum officer. I worked at the Houston Asylum Office, and we never knew that someone had sued the government. When I was interviewing an asylum applicant, I didn't know that they had sued the government or threatened to sue. That kind of information just did not go into the asylum file, okay? So it was something I was oblivious to. I just didn't know about it at all. I think that it's still that way. I can't be positive, but I think it's still the case that the asylum officers probably don't know when someone has sued because, well, we've been suing a lot lately. And when we represent the clients, then at the interview, never once has the officer said anything about the fact that our client sued. And they don't act strange, and they're, we're winning most of these cases. So I don't think they're holding it against us. Okay. So I really don't think that they know. Okay. But the second thing is, even if they do know, it's kind of like, so what? I don't really think it's going to hurt you, even if they do know, because I don't think that they really care that much. First of all, in the United States, we sue all the time. Suing to get something that you think you're entitled to, and you are entitled to this, by the way, is not a big deal. I understand that in other countries, in a lot of cultures, it may be viewed as a very aggressive step. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the person went so far as to do something so crazy as sue. But in the United States, we sue all the time. It's no big deal for us. We love suing. It's like taking out the trash. We do it every other day. So the fact that you've sued is it's like, okay, no big deal. That happens all the time. And I think, honestly, there's probably a lot of asylum officers who understand, who are probably a little bit sympathetic to people who have been waiting for their asylum interview for years because, they know people want to get on with their lives, right? You want certainty about your future. You want to know whether you're going to be able to stay here long term so that you can make plans and really just build your life here with confidence. And so I think it's reasonable that someone in that position would, assert their rights, that they would take this step of suing, because the government is supposed to act in a reasonable time on any immigration application. And when they don't do that, you can sue them. You can ask a federal judge to tell them that they need to do their job. Okay. So those are the two reasons that I do not think it's going to hurt your asylum case. One, I don't think the officer is going to know about it. And two, even if they do know, I don't think they're going to care. Okay. So I'm very confident about this. I don't worry about it at all for our clients. I don't sometimes think, oh, maybe, I don't know, this could be a close call because they might hold it against us. It may hurt our client's asylum claim. No, not a concern. Okay. That's how confident I am that suing the government will not hurt your underlying asylum case. Okay. So if you want to talk about suing the government, about how you can force your asylum interview or force getting your decision if you've already had your interview, you should call us. Okay. On YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, the number is right above my head. On TikTok, go to my profile and you'll see our telephone number. Or you can go to the website winasylum.com. That's WINASYLUM.com. Right now, we're offering free consultations. This is relatively new. We used to charge. For years, I charged for consultations, but right now they're free. So take advantage of that. If you want to talk with an asylum specialist, someone who focuses on asylum, about your underlying asylum case, like about how to win it, what we could do to help you strengthen your case and improve your chances for success. Or if you want to talk about suing the government to get your interview or get your decision, call us and schedule an asylum strategy session with us. Okay. On YouTube, it's above my head. By the way, for those of you on TikTok, go to my profile for the number, but also TikTok, go over to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, go to YouTube and search for Political Asylum Lawyers. That's the name of my law firm. I'm Brian Manning. My law firm is called Political Asylum Lawyers. And that's the name of my YouTube channel. And that's where we've got all kinds of content, lots of free trainings. I've made quite a few very detailed, pretty extensive, thorough asylum trainings that are going to give you concrete, practical tips for things that you can do to increase your chances for success in your asylum case. So go over there and subscribe and work through some of those videos. Okay. All right. Eric says hello from YouTube. With that, let's go to questions on TikTok and YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Okay. Cedric from Congo B. I assume by that you mean Brazzaville, Congo Brazzaville. Is that right, Cedric? Tell me, Eric, whether that's right. Yeah, I know. I have not been to Republic of Congo, but I've been to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I've been across the river to Congo Kinshasa a couple of times, actually. I know the Great Lakes region pretty well. I've read extensively about the Congo. Fascinating country, fascinating region with Kinshasa and Brazzaville right there next to each other. Thanks for commenting. All right. So, all right. This is interesting. Memo 11 says, hey, Brian, I sued USCIS for a delayed green card based on approved asylum, and they transferred my case from the National Benefit Center to Sacramento office 20 days ago. Shall I hear good news soon? I'm stressed. Yes. Probably so. So the question is, after you've sued the government to try to get them to issue a decision or to give you an interview, and you've learned that they have transferred your case from one office to another. In this case, you're saying they moved the case over to a field office. That's good news, because that's where the case gets adjudicated, where someone's going to actually make a decision. In cases like yours, where you're applying for a green card based on your asylee status, they don't usually do interviews. They sometimes do, but it's more likely that they'll just make a decision without an interview. But that's where that decision will be made. So yeah, the fact that it was moved to that office after you sued is a good sign. Yeah, you'll probably be hearing soon. If I trust that you didn't withdraw the lawsuit yet, that it's still pending to sort of keep the fire under their feet, to ensure that they keep moving and actually do what they probably told you or your lawyer they're going to do. But yeah, that's a good sign. You're probably headed toward resolution. So congratulations. Okay. I came to the border. I haven't filed my asylum yet. I have the asylum documents. I'm not sure though what your question is about that. I don't know how to go about it. Okay, cool. Thank you for the question. So the question is like, you come here and you want to apply for asylum, but you don't know how. So what do you do? Well, first of all, I think it's best to hire a lawyer, but I understand that lots of people, it's just not a possibility for them. Okay. The next best thing to hiring an asylum lawyer is going to my YouTube channel, Political Asylum Lawyers, and looking at the tutorials, the full length training videos that I have. For example, I posted one a few weeks ago that is like 3 hours long, it is very long, but it's super, super detailed about exactly how to fill out the asylum application form. I go over like every single question, explain to you what it means. I tell you what they're looking for. And in some cases, I give examples of the kinds of questions or the kind of responses that could be appropriate based on what they're trying to get from you. So go to my YouTube channel on YouTube, search for Political Asylum Lawyers. But in terms of what you do to apply, well, if you came to the border, you got to figure out whether your case is already with the immigration court or whether it has not yet been filed there. You can use that using your A number, what they used to call an alien number, just like an immigration number. It's on all the documents that you got from the agents when you were held or detained at the border. And you can go to the immigration court website and check with that number to see if you have a case, if your case has been registered with the court yet. If it has, then that's where you apply for asylum. If you check that number and it says no case found for this A number, then you can't apply with the immigration court. Instead, you have to send it to USCIS. It's a little bit more complicated. You have to do it on paper, which is annoying. You can't apply online like some people can with USCIS. But I mean, the first step is you have to apply, right? You have to get the asylum application form I-589, and you have to fill it out. You have to provide a few required documents like identification. And if you're including family members in your claim, you need to provide proof of a qualifying relationship, a marriage certificate for your spouse, and birth certificates for your children, and their identity documents as well. So that's the first step. But before you go and fire off your asylum application, you have to develop your case. Like, you have to develop the theory of the case. So when someone hires my law firm to apply for asylum, when we send in the asylum application packet, we do not at that time send in all of the evidence and like the declaration from the client and my legal brief and country conditions information. So we do that later, but we do have to do a lot of work up front to really understand the case. Why? Well, the asylum application form, it has 2 pages worth, probably 7 or 8 substantive questions. The rest is all like biographical, personal, like where did you live? Where did you work? Who's your family? But then there's a few questions that are substantive in nature. By that, I mean, they're like about your asylum claim. Like, hey, what has happened to you and why? And why do you fear going back? What do you fear will happen and why would it happen? And you have to be careful about that. You need to frame that and explain your case carefully. It's not the place to be super, super detailed. You're going to be quite detailed later when you develop a declaration for use in your case. But at this stage of just applying, you need to summarize the case. You need to give the officer or judge an understanding of what your case is about and give a few examples of some of the most important things that have happened or reasons that you have to be afraid, while sort of painting a picture of what the case is about and developing the theory of the case. It is important to get that right, and that takes a lot of work. Even though it's only like when we answer the substantive questions in an asylum application for our clients, or we do it with our clients, it's only going to be like 2 paragraphs long. The question like, hey, what's happened? Even if a lot has happened to our client, it's only going to be 2 or 3 paragraphs long. It's not going to be super detailed, but it's going to be done in a way that shows the officer exactly what they need to know about what's happened and whether that is serious enough to count as persecution, and importantly, why it happened, and showing that it was based or motivated by our client's possession of one of the 5 protected characteristics under U.S. asylum law, which are your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. So the point of all this is to say that it's not that hard to put together an asylum application and send it in, but I strongly recommend that you actually do it in a thoughtful, careful way, to sort of set the stage and get started on the right foot. Okay. Or else it can hurt you if you don't do that. All right. Thank you for the question over on TikTok. I appreciate it. All right. What other questions do we have? All right. All right. So on YouTube, we've got a question from Mukhtar that says, I have a valid EAD under TPS. Once expired, can I apply for a new EAD under asylum pending, as I have a pending asylum case? Thanks. So the question is whether you can have both a asylum pending based EAD and a TPS based EAD at the same time. Or specifically, you asked whether once your TPS EAD expires, you can apply for asylum. And the answer is actually, you can apply for both of them and have them both at the same time. You can have two EADs. EAD stands for Employment Authorization Document. It's also known as just a work permit. All right. And so you can have both at the same time. In fact, I encourage you to get both at the same time. Why? Well, your asylum case may go away at some point. It may be denied, and then you cannot renew your work permit based on your pending asylum case because you don't have an asylum case anymore. It's gone. Or if you're in immigration court, your case could get dismissed. And when your case is dismissed from immigration court, your asylum case disappears as well. And you can't renew your work permit based on asylum. So it's good to have that sort of backup based on TPS. But I mean, the same is true of the TPS based work permit, right? That TPS could go away. It could not be renewed and you'd be left without a work permit unless you have your asylum pending based work permit. So there's no downside. There's no negative to having both at the same time. So I recommend that you apply for and get both at the same time. Okay. All right. So on YouTube, we got a question that says from Cameron that says, I've been waiting for asylum interview for 1.5 years. Do I have a high chance for mandamus lawsuit? Do you have any similar cases? Thank you for the question, Cameron. I appreciate it. So the question is, how long do you have to wait before you can have a high chance for success with a mandamus lawsuit, which is where you're suing the government you're asking a federal judge to tell the asylum office, hey, give him his interview now. Give this person their asylum interview, or if they've already had their interview, their decision. And in this case, the question was, hey, I've been waiting for a year and a half. Do I have a chance for success with a mandamus case? I would say your chances for success are probably very low. Right now, we're telling people 3 years. We're telling people that you have to wait 3 years from the time that you applied to really be in a good position to have a significant chance for success in forcing your interview through threatening or actually suing in a mandamus lawsuit. There is no magic rule. There's no rule that says you have to wait this long. The rule or the guidance is that USCIS has to act in a reasonable time. And what's reasonable is not clearly defined anywhere. Okay. There's no regulation or anything that says, oh, here's what's reasonable, here's what's not. But what we've seen is that if you've been waiting 3 years or more, there's a pretty good chance for success. Okay. And so if you've been waiting less than 3 years right now, I would not take your case. A year and a half, I would say, I think the chances for success with mandamus are so low that it's probably doesn't make sense for you to pay us a bunch of money to do it, to sue the government. Probably doesn't make sense. Maybe there's some extenuating circumstances that change that analysis, but generally speaking, I'm going to say a year and a half is not enough time waiting to sue. Okay. By the way, when I talk about how long you must wait to sue in a mandamus lawsuit with a chance for success, I'm talking about from the time that your application was accepted by the government. Sometimes people will apply for asylum and then it'll take a long time, several years, and they'll get their asylum interview. But then it takes a long time after that and they still haven't gotten their decision. Maybe it'll be 6 months after the interview and no decision, or maybe it'll be a year and a half or 3 years and no decision. And they'll say, oh, well, let's say it's been 6 months. Oh, it's only been 6 months since my interview. I haven't got my decision. I guess I can't sue because it's only been 6 months since the interview. That's not the proper time frame to look at in deciding whether you have a good chance for a mandamus success. What you need to be looking at is the time from application, not the time from your interview. If you applied 5 years ago and you got your interview like 2 months ago and you haven't gotten a decision, you would have a high chance, I think, for success by suing. If you decide to do that, because they're not looking at the 2 months, they're looking at the whole time since you applied, not since you had your interview. Okay. So that's what I think. Thanks for the question. All right. I've been waiting for my interview for 8 years in New York City. What can I do? You should sue. At 8 years, I think you have a very high chance for success. Call us. Go to my TikTok, go to my profile, look at the phone number and call us right now and schedule a consultation with us. Okay. Right now we're offering free consultations. So call us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. The number is above my head. Excuse me, on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. On TikTok, it's in my profile. So call us and schedule a consultation so that we can see what's going on, tell you whether we think we can help you to get your interview, or tell you what we can do to help you strengthen your case if you've already applied, or if you're thinking about applying, we're going to tell you whether we think you have a chance for winning, and if so, exactly what we're going to do to give you the best possible chance to win your case. Okay. We help people who have not yet applied. We help people who have already applied. We help people both at the Asylum Office and in immigration court, also with appeals. If you got a negative decision from an immigration judge and you want to appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, or if you got a negative decision from the Board of Immigration Appeals and you want to appeal up to the next level, which is called a federal circuit court, we handle those appeals too. So call us and schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can see, whether we think we can help you. Okay. But yeah, at 8 years, yeah, you're in a strong position to have success by suing. Okay. All right. Does it help to have a congressperson, member of Congress, inquire about your case? So thanks for the question. So the question is whether having a member of Congress from the jurisdiction where you live reach out to the Asylum Office will help to get your interview scheduled at the Asylum Office. And the answer is no. Very, very, very rarely will this have any impact at all. So members of Congress, senators and representatives, they have what's called constituent services, where they try to help you when you have problems with the federal government, including people who are not citizens. And so if you reach out to their office and say, hey, I've been waiting for my asylum interview for 5 years, can you help me get it? They'll send an email to the Asylum Office and say, hey, what's this person's status? We hope that you'll give them all due consideration to keep processing their case as soon as possible. And the Asylum Office will reply and say, thanks, they're pending an interview. We will schedule them when it's their turn or when resources permit. And that's it. That's what happens. I know this because I was a congressional liaison for part of my time when I worked at the Houston Asylum Office. The last few months, I was what's called a congressional liaison, where I was like the link between the Asylum Office and the offices of the members of Congress in the area. And so I was doing this. I was engaging with the offices of the members of Congress. And so I saw this stuff firsthand, and I can tell you that it is very unlikely to be successful. Same with an ombudsman's request. Have you ever heard of an ombudsman's request? Really weird word. There's this office that's part of the Department of Homeland Security that's kind of the same idea. You can contact them and be like, hey, I'm having a problem with one of the DHS entities, including USCIS. Can you help me with it? And this office is supposed to kind of like look into it and maybe they'll help you move it forward. But in practice, no, we do not see that being successful. So really, suing is the best thing to do. And you don't have to do those other things first to sue. There's no like requirement that, first you need to go through a member of Congress and you need to go to the ombudsman's office. There's no requirement for that. Okay. If you've asked the Asylum Office for your interview and you've threatened to sue them, that's enough. Like, you don't need to jump through any more hoops in order to be successful with your lawsuit to sue to get your interview. Okay. Thanks for the questions. All right. On YouTube, we've got a question that, thank you, Mr. Dost Mohammed Essa, says, how easy is it to adjust status to employment from pending asylum? So thank you for the question. The question is, how easy is it to go from asylum pending to an employment-based status? All right. So employment-based status would be something like an H-1B status or an L-1 status, something like that. Or you can get a green card, also meaning permanent residence based on like employment and investment, things like that sometimes. And so people often ask this question like, hey, can I go from just having a pending asylum claim to one of those other statuses? The answer is maybe. It's tricky. It's tricky. Okay. It depends on several things, that you really need to look at with a lawyer who focuses on getting that kind of status that you want to get, which I don't do. I don't do any business, employment, or investment related status, okay, or cases. I focus on asylum. That's where what I think is my unique background and experience is as a former asylum officer and as a former diplomat who also dealt with immigration issues and some refugee related stuff. That's where my interest is, and it's where my unique training and background is. So I focus on asylum. I recommend that you reach out to a lawyer that specializes or focuses in exactly what it is that you think you might be eligible for, that you might want to consider getting, and you talk to them about, hey, can I get this? They're going to know better than me whether you're likely to be eligible to get that thing that you want. The short answer is, like, in some cases, yes, you can go. There are some people that can go from having a pending asylum case and no status, to getting a status that's based on business or employment or investment. So sometimes it's possible, but it really just depends on several things. And even then, there's some gray area. It can be tricky. So talk with a lawyer who focuses on that stuff. Okay. All right. Cameron says, can working with Asylum EAD be considered a violation of my F1 status? Thank you, Cameron, for the question. So the question here is, let's say you're a student, you've got student status, like F1 status. Well, if you get a work permit known as an EAD for employment authorization document, if you get that because you've got a pending asylum case, and then you go start working, is that going to mess up your student status? The answer is yes, it can. It can be considered a violation of your student status if you work in a way that violates your student status. Because remember, student status comes with certain rules about working, right? And so if you violate those rules, the USCIS can say, oh, you violated your student status and revoke that student status, take it away from you, okay? Even though you have an employment authorization document. What I tell people is, if you're in this position where you're still a student and you think you're going to want to stay a student, but you also are eligible to get a work permit based on your pending asylum case, I say apply for it and get it, but don't actually work until you've talked it over with an asylum lawyer and decided like you're okay with jeopardizing your F1 status. It's not a problem to get the work permit. You can get the work permit based on asylum without jeopardizing your student status. It's just whether you actually start working is the question, is the thing that could affect your F1 status. So I recommend applying for it so that you'll have it in case you need it, in case things take a bad turn and you're like, I have to work to support myself to get by, so that you'll already have it ready in your hand and you can start working as soon as you need to. Okay. All right. On TikTok, go over to YouTube. All right. Go to YouTube and search for political asylum lawyers. That's where you're going to find all my best stuff. All right. Okay, on YouTube, we got a question from Alwyn. Sorry if I mispronounced it. After asylum interview, how long do they take to respond? It's been almost 2 years now. Thanks for the question. So the question is, how long is it going to take to get your decision after your asylum interview? The answer, unfortunately, is it depends, and there's no set time frame. Well, there is a standard. The Asylum Office has the goal of making and sending out the decisions within 2 weeks of the interview, but that rarely happens these days. It used to, when I was an asylum officer, it happened pretty frequently, maybe half the time. Now it seems to me that it almost never happens that quickly. It's usually several weeks, maybe several months. You said it's been 2 years. That's abnormal. It happens. It's not like it's the first time I've seen that. It does happen fairly frequently, but it is definitely on the longer side. So when did you apply is the question. If you applied for asylum more than 3 years ago, then I think you should consider suing the government to force them to give you your decision. Okay. Eric from earlier, when I was talking about Congo, says Brazzaville. Yes. Cool. Congo, Brazzaville. Oh, I used to have behind me on this shelf back here, a book called Sapeurs of Congo. Eric, I'm sure that you can appreciate that. It was like a picture book and information book about Sapeurs. It's in the other room now. All right. Thank you. Okay, good question. Sorry for the confusion on this. Amal says, is your law firm called Manning Law or Political Asylum Lawyers? Yeah, that's a little confusing. That's my bad. So it used to be called Manning Asylum Law. And like on Facebook, it still appears as Manning Asylum Law just because I've been unable to change it. But Everywhere else, you should be seeing political asylum lawyers. All right. We just rebranded like a year ago or a little less, from Manning Asylum Law to political asylum lawyers. But if you see something that says Manning Asylum Law, that's probably me. I've never seen any other Manning Asylum Law. If it's something that's old, a holdover, or a screenshot of something old or whatever, that's me. But now we call ourselves political asylum lawyers. That's our website is politicalasylumlawyers.com. And that's what our YouTube channel is called. So on TikTok, if you're not on YouTube and subscribe, go over to YouTube, go and search for political asylum lawyers and subscribe. That's where my best content is. Lots of free full-length trainings about how to win your asylum case. Okay. But yep, thanks for asking. Happy to have the opportunity to clarify that for you, Amal. All right. All right. All right. Good question. On YouTube, Mekthi says, good afternoon, sir. How long is the wait time for affirmative asylum for people who have received 5 years work authorization just recently? Thanks. Thank you for the question. So the question is for people who recently applied for asylum and then went on to get a work permit based on it that's valid for 5 years. The question is, how long is it going to take for those people to get their asylum interview? The answer is, I don't know. But since you haven't gotten it already, and your case has been pending, I know at least more than 6 months, right? Because if you've got your work permit, then that means that you applied at least 6 months ago, right? So the fact that you have not had your asylum interview yet is not a very good sign. It probably means that it's going to be quite a while longer, maybe many months, maybe years. The policy of USCIS is to try to schedule as quickly as possible cases for interview when they come in, but they can't always do that. And recently they've very infrequently done it. What happens is they have to prioritize certain types of cases. So one of those things is what's called credible fear interviews. When people come to the U.S. southern border and they ask for asylum, there's a rule that says those people need to get what's called a credible fear interview. It's kind of like a mini asylum interview by telephone. Usually they need to have that with an asylum officer within like 7 days of coming into the border. And that's like a rule that the asylum office really tries to observe. So they prioritize scheduling those. They say, oh, a lot of people are coming to the border. Well, we need to take more of our asylum officers and move them from asylum interviews over to credible fear interviews. So basically they have to shift their resources. So when there's a bunch of people coming to the border, there's a lot of credible fear interviews to be done, which means that there's fewer asylum interviews getting done. And that's what has really slowed things down in the last year. There was a time like a year or two ago when most people were getting their asylum interviews very quickly. Most people were getting it within like 2 months of applying. But then there was a surge of people to the southern border, so more credible fear interviews to be done. And also the government said, wait, we also need to prioritize cases from Afghanistan. So when a bunch of Afghans were brought here after the Taliban took back over control, those cases got prioritized. So it just pushed everyone further back in line. And how it works is if like in those first couple or few months, if you don't get your interview because they're like, oh, we're focusing on other things, so we can't get to you now, we can't schedule you now, then you're going to get put in the back of the line after that. After you sort of miss that chance to do it quickly, then you get put back in the back, way back in the line. And it's probably going to be many months or maybe years. If you get to 3 years, then I recommend that you sue the government to force them to give you your asylum interview. Okay. That's what I recommend. Can you get asylum based on FGM? Thanks for asking. So the question is whether you can get asylum based on female genital mutilation. That's known as FGM, the acronym FGM. And the answer is yes. You probably know that to get asylum, it's not enough to prove that you've been persecuted or that you're likely to be persecuted in the future. Rather, you've also got to show that the persecution is motivated, at least in significant part, by the fact that you, the asylum applicant, possess one of the 5 protected grounds under U.S. asylum law. Those are your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and something called membership in a particular social group. And the way that the law has developed is that people who are subjected or may be subjected to female genital mutilation, sometimes called female genital cutting, this is considered to fit within that 5th box called membership in a particular social group. So Yeah, the short answer is yes. That can be a reason, that can give rise to a valid, viable asylum claim. And if that's happened to you, I'm really sorry to hear about that. That's terrible. Or if you're afraid it might happen to you or a family member, that's really tough. I'm sorry you're in that position. The good news is that yes, that can make for a winning asylum claim. Okay. All right. All right. Nice. Thank you. Adil says, Mr. Brian, you're doing a great job helping and guiding the people about latest immigration news. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to comment. Very nice. We talked about getting your green card from the Sacramento office. Thank you, Brian. Hopefully I'll get my green card soon from the Sacramento office. Fingers crossed. I hope so. All right. So Khalida says, hi, Brian. I have some questions related to asylum seekers' relatives. Can they enter the U.S. with F1 visa when the case is pending? Good question. Thank you for asking it. So the question here is, when you've got an asylum case pending, whether your family members can come to the United States. So you probably know that there's no way for you to petition for them or invite them to come based on your pending asylum status. But the next question is, okay, well, can they just get a tourist visa or maybe an F1 student visa or something else that maybe they qualify for? Can they get that and come to the United States while your asylum case is pending? And the answer is maybe, but they might get denied because your asylum case is pending. Here's the thing. Before I was an asylum officer, I was a diplomat and I did the visa work. I did some visa interviews. And back then, this was years ago, we didn't know that someone or their family members had applied for asylum. That information did not reach us in the visa information that we had. But it may be different now. I had a client tell me recently that, when my family went to the interview, I think it was for an F1 visa, the visa officer, the consular officer said, I see here in my information that your husband applied for asylum and he overstayed his tourist visa and he's seeking asylum. Therefore, I can't give you a visa because I think that you're probably just going to go and do the same thing. You're going to go try and be part of his asylum case and stay permanently or apply yourself for asylum. So maybe they do. I don't know if this was a unique case such that there's some reason in particular in this case they knew, or maybe it's that all visa officers have information to lots of data about asylum applicants. Even if they don't, it could come up in the interview. They can ask the visa officer, consular officer can ask your spouse or whoever, hey, do you have family in the U.S.? In fact, there's a question about this on the visa application form is about family in the U.S. And so if you tell them, yeah, and they say, what are they doing there? What's their status? And you say, well, they're seeking asylum. That can be a thing that will make the visa officer doubt your family's intentions in terms of them saying, no, I'm going to go stay for just a little while and then I'm going to leave for vacation or for studies or whatever. That very often will get you denied. If the mere fact that a visa applicant has a close family member in the U.S. who stayed longer than they said they were going to, overstayed, and is seeking asylum, yes, that's a thing that could lead to your family being denied. So unfortunately, there is definitely a real risk that your family can be denied because you have an asylum claim pending in the U.S. All right. Jignesh Patel says, what happens if we lose our asylum case? If we lose? Thanks for the question. So the question is, what happens if you lose your asylum case, if you get a negative decision? Well, it depends on where you are, in what kind of process you're in and what your immigration status is. So if you're at the asylum office, right, you're not in deportation proceedings and you apply for asylum affirmatively with USCIS and you get a negative decision, they say, nope, no asylum for you, you're not qualified. What happens next depends on your status at that moment when they make that negative decision. If you have some other status, if your tourist status is still valid or you have a student status, whatever the case may be, then they don't put you in deportation proceedings. Rather, they send you a letter that says, we intend to deny your case for the following reasons, but you have 16 days to respond to us in writing and try to change our minds. You can do that. Usually it's impossible to change their minds. And then they issue a final denial, but nothing happens further. You keep that other status and you didn't get asylum. But if in the moment when USCIS makes the negative decision, you do not have legal status, then you get put in deportation proceedings. They transfer or refer your case to immigration court where the government is trying to deport you. But in immigration court, you get a second chance. You get to explain your case to the judge, and the judge decides whether you get asylum. But if the judge says no, you're going to get an order of deportation. Thankfully, you can appeal that. In fact, after the immigration court level, there's 2 levels of appeals beyond that you can take, such that you can keep fighting your case for quite a while if necessary. Okay. So that's how that works. Thanks for the question. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. All right. So Yasser says on YouTube says, will dismissing or terminating my case in court, is it better for me to dismiss my case than applying for asylum to any USCIS office? Not sure I understand the question, Yasser, exactly, but I'll try to address what I think you might be talking about, which is, so the question is, if you're in immigration court, should you try to have your case dismissed? And if so, what happens next? Should you apply with USCIS? The Biden administration has said, you know what, certain people in immigration court proceedings are not a priority. We don't really care. We don't want to spend the time and effort and money to try to deport them. So we're okay with their cases getting dismissed, which means like it goes away, it disappears. You're no longer in deportation proceedings. But when that happens, your asylum claim disappears as well. So you can't get asylum through the immigration court. But if you want to keep seeking asylum, then you can apply with USCIS. You can send your application to them and they will consider your case. That is, if you didn't previously have an interview with them. They recently clarified that if you previously had an asylum interview at USCIS and they said no asylum, and then we're referring you to the immigration court, and then your case gets dismissed from immigration court, you're out of luck, basically. If you apply, well, not totally. If you apply for asylum again back to USCIS, they're going to accept your application, but then they're going to send it back to immigration court. And you're going to be back in immigration court where you could pursue your claim. So if your case was involuntarily dismissed from immigration court, that might make sense. If you wanted to fight, but the prosecutor wanted to dismiss it and the judge said, okay, yeah, we'll dismiss this, then it might make sense to apply again with USCIS, even though you already had an interview there, which means that they're just going to send it straight back to immigration court. It's a risky move to knowingly subject yourself to deportation proceedings again, but it's the only way to get asylum in that circumstance. And if you believe in your case and you want to take that risk so you can try to get a status that's basically permanent, it could make sense. Okay. In immigration court, yeah, if you don't win your case in immigration court, you can appeal up to 2 different levels. Okay. This question, though, of whether to ask to have your case dismissed or whether to go along with it if the prosecutor wants to do it is a tricky question. You should really talk that over with an asylum lawyer. Okay. Thankfully, right now, we're offering free consultations on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. Look, that number's above my head. On TikTok, go to my profile and you'll see the number where you can reach us to schedule a free consultation. All right. So, Yasser says they're from Sudan. Thank you. Nice. All right. We already answered a question from Kamran. Let's find someone who has not had their question addressed yet. All right. Good question. Ryan Shine says on YouTube, if you apply for asylum due to conditions in your country and before your interview is scheduled, the situation in your country is no longer considered dangerous, will you still be eligible for asylum? Thanks for the question. So the question is, you came to the United States when things were bad in your country and you applied for asylum, but before you get your interview, you're like, things have gotten better, conditions have improved. So is that going to hurt your asylum case? Can you still win? Let me start in addressing this by saying that just the fact that things are bad in your country, even if there's like war going on, is not necessarily going to be enough for you to win asylum. Okay. You have to show that you are at risk. Okay. Because you have been targeted or someone wants to harm you, or you fit the profile of a group that's being widely persecuted because they possess one of the 5 protected characteristics under U.S. asylum law: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, let's say that things do change in a way that, in the past you had a real reason to be afraid that you would be harmed because of, let's say, your religion. Let's say there's a lot of violence and fighting in your country over religion, and the group that threatened you and maybe harmed you in the past has dissolved. Like they've gone away and they're no longer targeting people. That's a change condition. So is that going to hurt your asylum case? Probably. Yeah, probably. It's not going to be impossible to win. You can sometimes win asylum based just on things that have happened in the past. When it's really, really bad, when the past persecution is especially severe, there's this rule basically that says, listen, if the past persecution on account of a protected ground was super, super severe, then we'll give you asylum even if you no longer have a fear of being harmed in the future. Most cases you have to show I'm still at real risk of being harmed in the future. But there's like kind of like two exceptions to that. And that one I just told you is the most common. Well, actually, it might not be the most common. The other one is where you suffered past persecution on account of a protected ground, but then you no longer have fear of well-founded fear of being persecuted in the future on account of a protected ground, but you would be subjected to other serious harm. So harm that maybe has nothing to do with the 5 protected grounds. Like let's say a general war, right? If there's like a massacre going on, and it's not because of any protected grounds, like, because not all wars count as like things that can give you asylum. But it would be other serious harm such that you could still win asylum, even if the thing that really led you to be afraid in the first place has changed such that now you're not afraid because of that. Sort of complicated. Probably a good idea for you to talk this over with an asylum lawyer. All right. Go to winasylum.com, 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 and you can schedule a consultation, okay, with one of our asylum professionals to see what's going on with your case, and we'll tell you whether we think we can help you. And if so, we'll tell you exactly what we'll do to give you the best possible chance to win your asylum case, okay? All right. So Assignment Angel says, hello, can you please, on YouTube, can you please talk about the LGBT affirmative asylum interview fashion for the Houston USCIS office? Why is the Houston approval rate so low? How about LGBT asylum seekers in Houston? Yeah, I can talk about that because I used to be an asylum officer at the Houston Asylum Office. And yes, and I've handled LGBT claims there, both as an asylum officer and now as an asylum lawyer. It's tough. The Houston Asylum Office, as you said, does have a very low approval rate. It's one of the lowest in the country. And I feel like it's only gotten worse and harder to get asylum there in the last couple of years. As a person from the LGBTQ plus community, you probably have a chance of winning. Most people in that position from most countries have at least some chance of winning. It's definitely not automatic. If you're a gay person from Uganda, you have a pretty good chance of winning. But even then, it can be hard. You have to convince the asylum officer that you are in fact gay, which I know sounds really weird and is messed up, but you do have to convince them of that. And sometimes they think that you're lying, or they just want to deny you anyway, no matter what, and they find excuses to do that. Okay. Here's the thing. There are a lot of asylum officers who are anti-immigrant, and they're just looking for an excuse to deny you. Okay. They will go out of their way to try to get you to commit errors in your testimony so that you will commit what are called inconsistencies. And they'll say, oh, earlier you said X, but now you're saying Y, and those two things are different. Can you explain why you've told me 2 different things today about this issue? And if you don't give what they consider to be a reasonable explanation, and this happens a few times, this happens like 2 or 3 times, then they can say, oh, there were too many inconsistencies in your case, and therefore you're not credible, and therefore you're denied. This is a very common tactic that asylum officers use to deny asylum when they just don't want to give it out, okay? So even in cases that look really good, like I was saying, someone who's gay coming from Uganda, first blush, it's like, oh, that's a great case. That should definitely win. It should win, but they sometimes don't, okay? So you do have to present your case really well. You have to be very careful about how you frame it and how you document it and how you approach it. And you got to prepare really well. You got to practice and be really prepared so that you can do a great job at your asylum interview and not get tripped up. Okay. But yeah, it's tough. At Houston, it's tough. My law firm is based in Houston. We help people all over the country, but we have a lot of cases at the Houston Asylum Office. I know that office well. That's where I worked for 2.5 years. And, we're in there all the time for asylum interviews. So I hope you'll give us a call. we like helping people with this kind of case. So give us a call, schedule a consultation with us, an asylum strategy session, so that we can see whether we think we can help you. Okay. All right. On YouTube, Mamadou says, can I apply for an EAD with my asylum application at the same time? Thank you for asking, Mamadou. I appreciate it. So the question is whether you can apply for a work permit at the same time that you're applying for asylum. No, you cannot apply for an EAD. EAD is the acronym for Employment Authorization Document. That's the formal official name for a work permit. You cannot apply for them at the same time. You're eligible to apply for your work permit based on your pending asylum claim 150 days after the government has accepted your asylum application. Okay. The government can't actually issue the work permit based on this until 180 days, but you can send it in and apply for it at 150 days. And then usually these are pretty quick for first-time applicants based on asylum pending. It's usually just taking about 2 months or so for USCIS to issue the work permit. So you want to be ready to apply and hit send. You can do this online now, by the way, and you should do it online. At 150 days, hit send on that application, and then you'll probably get it in somewhere between 1 and 3 months later. Okay. Nice. That's funny. So Camel says, hey, sir, hope you're okay. Did you see anyone who got deported after immigration court? Is there any chance to change status after immigration court, though? Thank you. Appreciate the question. So the question is whether people, actually get deported after immigration court. And the answer is, yeah, they do. Every day there are people getting deported because they lose their case in immigration court. But remember, after immigration court, you have 30 days to appeal. You can go up to the next level called the Board of Immigration Appeals. If you think that the immigration judge in your case made mistakes, you can appeal and you try to explain why the judge messed up. And if the Board of Immigration Appeals agrees with you, you can go back and you can win your case and not be deported. There's also another level of appeals you can make after the BIA. So if the Board of Immigration Appeals disagrees with you, you can appeal that decision. So between these two appeals, you can keep fighting your case probably for years. Okay. You also might be able to get the proceedings, the case dismissed even after you get a deportation order. Like while your case is pending with the Board of Immigration Appeals, you can ask the prosecutors from ICE if they'll agree to basically drop the case against you. But to go back to your question about can you get another status, not while your case is still, not while you have the deportation order, like while your case is still pending, like an appeal. No, you'd have to get it dismissed or get the case reopened and get it like dismissed, the deportation order removed to be able to get another status. Okay. Nice. This is a good question. I'm going to follow this up. So a follow-up question is, how do you demonstrate if someone is gay to an immigration judge? Do I videotape myself being physically intimate with someone? I was born in a Muslim majority country. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I'm sorry that you're in this position, where you have to like prove that you're gay to someone, which is, it's messed up. It's stupid that it is that way, but it is. So how do you do it? No, I would not go out of your way to film yourself being intimate with someone. But you do want to show like pictures of things that, this is going to sound really crass because it is, the things that quote unquote look gay. Like if you've been, for example, if you've been to like a pride parade or you've spent time at gay bars that, have rainbow flags everywhere. And just by looking at it, someone would think, oh yeah, it looks like they're probably at some kind of gay, club or whatever. Those kinds of things are the kinds of things that you want to show pictures of you at those things. And then also like messages, if you've sent text messages or Grindr messages or whatever app or medium you use with like where you're like flirting with someone or talking with someone who is your partner or you're flirting with or whatever that looks a little bit romantic. It doesn't have to be, it can be overtly sexual in nature. I would avoid pictures of anything sexual, like of naked people. Don't include pictures of naked people, but like text messages talking about things that sound flirty or romantic, yeah, I would include that. Letters also from people that you've been in a romantic relationship with, or just that know you really well and know that you're gay, can be helpful as well. And including having some of those people can even testify at your hearing about the fact that you're gay. Again, all of this is ridiculous that you have to jump through these hoops, but you do to win your case in immigration court or at the asylum office. Okay, but we do this on a case-by-case basis, where when our clients tell us about their case, we do that in writing. We have them write out kind of a draft statement where they tell us what's happened and why they're afraid to go back. And then we ask them a bunch of questions about it in written format. And with their answers, that's how I get all the information that I need to make the strongest arguments possible in their case. And also, this helps inform what evidence we're going to ask for. So based on what we've learned about your case, we're going to ask you, we're going to make a list, and we're going to say, try to get the following things, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're going to explain like what we mean, and you're going to try to get it. Okay. So, I mean, the things that I mentioned earlier are examples that apply to pretty much all LGBTQ plus asylum cases, but there's going to be very specific things. And like, for example, who you're going to try to get the letters from is going to be informed by, the facts of your particular case. And once we learn about your case, we're going to ask you specifically, hey, try to get these things that we think are going to be the most impactful for winning your asylum case. Okay. All right. That is time for today. Thank you for being at the Asylum Answers show. I'm Brian Manning, and my law firm is called Political Asylum Lawyers, and we help people all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. So call us right now. Like, you can call literally right now. We'll answer to schedule a consultation, what we call an asylum strategy session, so that we can learn what's going on with you and tell you whether we think we can help you. And if so, tell you exactly what we're going to do to help you, give you the best possible chance to win your case. Or if you're waiting for more than 3 years for an asylum interview or decision from USCIS, then call us, because we can talk about getting that decision or interview. Okay. That's it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of you, and it's always a pleasure. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's a pleasure really to support you in your asylum journey. So thank you, and have a good